Hello friends, English Literature, Introduction to Poetry, or to the West Wind by Percy Bysshe Shelley. Short questions with answers. Question 1. How does the poet depict the West Wind as a destroyer and preserver? Answer. The poet conceives of the West Wind as the breath of autumn. It is considered as an all-pervasive force and is a destroyer and a preserver. The West Wind's presence is described as an unseen force. From its unseen presence, the dead leaves of autumn are driven away. The dead leaves are of various colors: yellow, black, pale, and bright red. They look like the pestilence stricken multitudes, much like the people of various shapes, sizes, and colors who have died from an epidemic disease. How they are driven away has been compared to the manner in which ghosts flee from an enchanter. This is how the West Wind works as a destroyer. It destroys the dead leaves of autumn. It has an opposite function as a preserver. As a chariot drove the enemies in fighting in olden days, the West Wind drives the seeds of trees and thrusts them into the earth, where they remain inert during the winter. With the advent of spring, the seeds sprout. Trees of flowers and fruits grow in abundance and fill the land and hills with living colors and fragrance. This picture of the West Wind has been depicted very vividly and colorfully in the poem. Question 2. The West Wind has been called the Diary of Dying Year. How does the poet justify this comment? Answer. The poet gives a very striking description of the West Wind as a diary for the dying year. It is conceived as a concept of as a stream of wind which creates great commotion in the sky. Loose clouds which look like the earth's decaying leaves are shaken from the tangled boughs of ocean and sky. They are the angels of rain and lightning. They are spread on the blue surface of the airy surge of the wind, even from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith's height. They look like the locks of hair uplifted from the head of some fierce maenad. All these seem to compose the dirge for the dying year. A dirge is the mourning song sung after the death of somebody. It has a language of its own, and when sung, it creates a feeling of sadness in the mind of those who hear it. In the case of the West Wind, the commotion that it makes in the sky, then the sounds produced by the rain, lightning, and hailstorm, which burst from the widespread clouds, form the language and create the mood appropriate for those who pursue the death of the year. Question 3. How does the West Wind exercise its power over the Mediterranean and the Atlantic? Or how are the seas affected by the mighty West Wind? Answer. The West Wind exhibits its great power on the seas, and it does on the land and in the sky. It weakened the Mediterranean Sea, which is personified in the poem from his Summer Dreams. He was lying beside a Pumice Isle in Bales Bay, lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams. In his comfortable sleep, he was dreaming about the old palaces and towers that once existed on the shore of the Mediterranean and went under the water as a result of natural catastrophe. He was seeing the old palaces and towers quivering within the powerful motion of the waves. They were all overgrown with the azure moss and flowers, and their beauty and fragrance were such that the man's sense faints picturing them in his mind. The West Wind has its influence on the powerful Atlantic Ocean as well. As in fear of the mighty West Wind, the Atlantic Ocean cleaves its smooth surface into chasms so that the wind may blow on its surface without any hindrance. The sea blooms, and the woods that grow on the soft mud of its bed hear the sound of the West Wind and suddenly grow pale with fear, and they tremble and despoil themselves. The West Wind does exercise the power over the seas. Question 4. What does the poet entreat the west wind to do for him? Or what prayer does the poet make to the west wind and why? Answer. The poet makes an honest request to the west wind to help him in his shore need. He wishes that he were a dead leaf so that so the west wind could carry him. He wishes that he were a wave, and in that case the west wind could press upon him and he could part beneath it and share its power. He again wishes that he were a cloud and could fly with the west wind. Then, as if incidentally, the poet reveals that in his boyhood he was so powerful that he could have outstripped the west wind in speed in the sky if he were to fly with him. But now he has grown weak, and so he entreats the wind to take him off as his companion in the form of a cloud. He has striven to make this entreat to the west wind because he falls upon the thrones of life and bleeds. That is, he has been chained and bowed down by the adverse circumstances of life. Though he is as tameless and swift and proud as the west wind, he is now in jeopardy and entreats the west wind to help him in his sore need. Question 5. What does the poet ask the west wind to do at last, or why? Answer. The poet makes different entreaties to the west wind to lift him as a leaf, as a wave, or as a cloud. Then he wants the west wind to make him as his lyre. But he is not satisfied with all this. At last he proposes that the west wind merge itself into the poet completely so that they become one. The west wind is as fierce and as impetuous as the poet himself is. So if the west wind merges itself into the poet's being and they become one, it would be absolutely suitable. In that case, the mighty wind will become the poet himself. It would then drive his dead thoughts like the withered leaves of autumn over the world and sow the seeds of a new generation. It would scatter by the incantation of these birds his words among mankind, much in the same way as ashes and sparks are scattered from an extinguished heart. The west wind could then be through his lips the trumpet of a prophecy, the poet's prophecy to bring in a new millennium. Thank you, friends, for watching.